The Inov8 Trailfly versus the Nnormal Tomir 2.0. Two all-around trail shoes that share a lot of similarities and have an emphasis on technical trail running, but how do you decide which one is right for you? Surprisingly, this is the first trail shoe versus that I've done on this channel, but this is an interesting one to be the first video in this series. Now, on paper, these two shoes have a lot of similarities, and on trail, they actually have a lot of overlap. However, they achieve that in very, very different ways. And starting with the specs of these two shoes, as you can see, there are a lot of similarities. The Nnormal Tomir 2.0 has a little bit more foam, and you do feel that underfoot. It's a little bit more cushioned ride, and it has an 8mm drop, which feels like a true 8mm drop, whereas the Inov8 Trailfly has a little less foam underfoot and a 6mm drop, which does feel 6 to 4. It's a lower drop. You do definitely feel that. The lugs in the Trailfly are 4mm. The lugs in the Tomir 2.0 are 5mm, plus they're more spaced out. So the Tomir 2.0 is better for more muddy terrain, and the Trailfly is better for harder packed and rocky terrain. But again, they both cover the same terrain very well. The weights are very similar, as you can see. In the Inov8 Trailfly, we have Inov8's PowerFlow Pro foam, which is a just very good EVA foam, and a flexible Metashank rock plate, which runs heel to toe. It's not a film, it's a nylon rock plate, but it's very flexible. This shoe has a lot of flex in it. And we have Inov8's Graphene Grip, which is a graphene infused rubber outsole covering the entire outsole of the Trailfly. On the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, we have Nnormal's X-Pure foam, which is their supercritical EVA foam. No rock plate at all in that shoe. And we have Vibram Mega Grip Light Base outsole with Vibram's traction lugs on the lugs, which are little dimples on the lugs, which give a little additional grip. From a ride standpoint, I would call the Trailfly very dense but flexible, and there is a little bit of a pop from this shoe, whereas the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, I would call that cushioned. It's not a foam you're sinking into, but it's definitely, for trail use, one that you would consider a cushioned shoe. And moving to the outsoles of these two shoes, this is where you can really see the differences between these two shoes. For the Inov8 Trailfly, this uses Inov8's anatomical last, which is a natural foot-shaped last, meaning it has a wide toe box that allows for toe splay and a straight big toe, a narrow waist, and a nice pocket in the heel. Basically, it's shaped like a foot. Where in the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, we have a very classic Euro pointy torpedo-shaped last, which gives a very nice lockdown. From a contact patch on the ground or trail, they're very similar. The forefoots are the same width. The waist in the Trailfly is much narrower, and the heels are similar, though the Tomir is much wider. Overall, the Tomir gives you a much more planted feel, where the Trailfly gives you a much more agile feel. And looking at the lug pattern of these two shoes, you can see there's a lot of care and attention in the Inov8 Trailfly paid to putting lugs under specific zones of the foot, like under the big toe, under the ball of the foot, around the heel. And it's a very nice lug pattern that works very well for harder pack surfaces, rock, even does road running pretty well because the lugs are actually pretty wide. And it does hold its own in muddier conditions, where in the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, this uses a stock Vibram Zega Light outsole pattern with the traction lugs, which are little dimples on the lugs. This gives you much more grip into muddier conditions, but it holds its own because it is Vibram Mega Grip Light Base on rocky and harder pack conditions, and it does well with road running. Moving to the upper and fit of these two shoes, and starting with the Inov8 Trailfly, we have an air mesh upper that has an overlay on top of it that Inov8 calls the Met Cradle overlay. Basically, that gives the air mesh, which is very light and airy. There's a lot of breathability and drainability in this shoe. Structure where it needs it, in the midfoot, connecting the eyelet chain to the heel, so that locks your heel into the shoe. An ample toe bumper that keeps the material off your toe, but also gives a lot of rock protection up here. And overall, it's just a very simple, straightforward upper that holds the foot very well. And moving to the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, you can see some similarities in this upper. It's still a very simple upper, but this is actually a ripstop TPE upper, which is very, very durable. This shoe is built for durability, and you definitely feel that. This upper material is really good with keeping moisture out. So if you're running through muddy conditions, this does a really good job of that. But when your foot is wet and there is water in the shoe, it doesn't drain as well as the upper that's on the Trailfly. You can see there's a very simple overlay around the base of the upper, a toe bumper on here protecting the toe, and a very simple support around the eyelet chain. One thing I'll note about the eyelet chain is that it is somewhat asymmetrical on one side. Now this can cause some lacing issues in the Tomir 2.0. I have a high volume foot, high arch, and it took me a while to really get this in the right position on my foot because that sits right on the ridge. But once you do, it's not really an issue, but that is something to note with the Tomir 2.0. And moving to the fit of the Inov8 Trailfly, I'm going to say I went true to size in this shoe, but now my experience with natural shape shoes or anatomical lasts is that they tend to run either short or pretty tight to the foot. And this one's no different. When I first put this shoe on and I'm walking initially to start my run, I do feel the tip of my big toe just lightly touching the toe bumper in this shoe. But once I'm running, once I'm on trail, up, down, doesn't matter the terrain, I've never felt the toe rubbing in this shoe. I've never had any issues. That's because the lockdown in this shoe in the midfoot's so good. This does have a wide toe box, but this is Inov8's standard width. And I would say that this isn't the widest shoe that's out there. You do have a squared off toe box. There is room for toe splay, and you do get a straight big toe. But if you're thinking that this is a wide shoe, you may want to look at the wide model of this shoe because this fits more race-like, so it's a tighter fit around the foot, which for trail running, I actually prefer. And moving to the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, I went down half a size in this shoe. And that's the recommendation from Nnormal, is to take your normal size and size down half a size. So this is a US men's size 8.5, half a size smaller than my normal size. But since this shoe is more torpedo shaped, it's a straighter last, you do have more material in the front of your toes. And I know the preference to have a pointy toe box for some trail runners is a thing. That just gives you a little bit more rock protection because it's putting a little bit more material in front of your toe, and it just allows you to dig your toe in a little bit more. I will say that this shoe definitely has that, and I do feel that. I do like that. I kind of do have a preference for that, and this shoe is a really great fit if that's what you like in a trail shoe. And moving to the midsole and outsole, which in a trail shoe you really can't separate, and starting with the Inov8 Trailfly, this is using Inov8's PowerFlow Pro foam, which is just a really good, strong, solid EVA foam. This is a bit of a denser cushioning, but there's still a lot of feel because there's a lot of flexibility in this shoe. And combined with this outsole, which is using Inov8's graphene rubber, which is just a stickier rubber that's going to wear much slower. And you can see flex grooves in the lug pattern of the shoe. That just gives you a very flexible shoe that does have a dense cushioning system, but you have a lot of feel. There is also a heel-to-toe rock plate in this shoe, which is a nylon flexible rock plate. So again, a lot of flex in this shoe. So even though this shoe is lower to the ground, there's less foam in this shoe, you're definitely getting a lot of nice feel in this shoe. And if you're a runner who prefers a lot of ground feel on the trail, this is going to be a great option. And moving to the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, the midsole foam in this shoe is Nnormal's X-Pure foam, which this is their supercritical EVA variant. Now this also I would consider a dense foam, but it does feel a little bit more cushion. There's a little bit more sink in the shoe than the Inov8 Trailfly has. And you put the Vibram Mega Grip Light Base outsole on this shoe that has just a lot of flex properties. This is a nice shoe, though not quite as flexible as the Trailfly. But again, you're going to get a lot of good ground feel in this shoe, and you have a lot of protection. There's no rock plate or rock film in this shoe. This is just a really good foam with a really good outsole that gives you a ton of grip, a ton of feel on trail, but not being too much. You're not feeling every rock or everything you're stepping on. And overall, this is just a great all-arounder that does everything very well. Moving to the ride of these two shoes, this is where there are some key differences, and I've already alluded to a few of those. Now, in my mind, these two shoes really tick all of the same boxes as far as what I'm looking for in a trail shoe, which is why I'm comparing them. But they get there in very different ways, and they have slightly different feels. As I've already described, they have very different lasts. So if you prefer a more squared off forefoot and toe box, you're going to want the Nnormal Trailfly. If you like a more pointy shoe, you're going to like the Nnormal Tomir 2.0. If you want a little bit more ground feel and a little bit more flexibility, you're going to want the Inov8 Trailfly. However, this is still a very flexible shoe that does have good ground feel. You're just going to get a little bit more in this shoe. Both these shoes cover the same surfaces. However, if you're primarily running on drier, more rocky conditions, the Inov8 Trailfly is going to be the better option. This shoe just sticks to rock. This graphene rubber outsole in this shoe is amazing on rock. And for rock scrambles and rock faces, this shoe is optimal for that type of running. The Nnormal Tomir 2.0 will do that very, very well, but where this shoe excels because of the outsole in this shoe is more wetter, more muddy, maybe more rooty type trail where there is some rock and there is some rock scrambles, because Vega Mega Grip Light Base works really well on rock. But this is going to be better for muddier, more tree root type trail. This will do fine in that. This is just going to be the better option. You're going to have more grip and it's going to be more aggressive biting into those wet, slimy tree roots. Another way to see the differences between these two shoes is with my performance matrix. Now this is fundamentally the same matrix I've used for all my road shoe comparisons. I've just tweaked it a little bit. The definitions for the pacing is more just around level of effort, less around specific times, because trail running is just much more dynamic and you're going through a lot of different paces. And I've added another scale for technical trailability to mild trailability. So if we start with the Inov8 Trailfly, you can see that this covers a lot of this range. But I think the sweet spot for this shoe really is in that steady to threshold pace area. This is a shoe that likes technical terrain, it likes to push the pace, and it does it very well. It does easy running and cruising very nicely. And it's a great shoe for max effort, sort of intervals and reps. I do a lot of hill reps on trail in this shoe. It's nearly ideal for that because you have so much feel in the shoe. It just does that exceptionally well. For the Nnormal Tomir 2.0, you can see that there is a lot of overlap here. It's slightly less geared towards technical trail. I think this is much more broader in its use case. It does technical terrain very, very well. And the only real difference here is on the max effort side, the intervals and reps. For me, the Nnormal Tomir 2.0 is just a little bit more shoe than I want for that. But if you're racing a true ultra distance 50K plus, it's probably the better option because there's just a little bit more cushioning in it. There's a little bit more foam. There's just a little bit more shoe there. But again, its sweet spot is really in that steady to threshold, maybe a little bit more steady. It kind of likes cruising a little bit more. But again, there's a ton of overlap between these two shoes. So what's the verdict between these two shoes? Which one do I prefer? Well, both of these shoes are all-day trail shoes to me, meaning I can go out and spend all day on the mountains, trail running, fast packing, power hiking, or just hiking. But I slightly prefer the Inov8 Trailfly just because there's more flex in this shoe and there's more feel on the trail. And for the conditions that I have here in Taipei, Taiwan, I'm just on more rocky rock faces. So this just sticks to that all the better. This is no slouch. I love this shoe dearly, but if I had to choose between these two, I'm going to go with this one in the slightest of ways. Thank you for making it to the end of the video. If you find this content useful, consider subscribing. You'll see more content from me pop up in your feed. If not, drop a like on this video because it helps this channel continue to grow, which I always appreciate. And with that, I'll catch you in the next one.